You, my dear, need to run.
Well, well. Looks like we have some new targets.
A little fire never hurt anybody.
What?
I can't believe these guys are still chasing me. Plus thing is, we're getting tons of loot out of here. And like tons of XP. Alright, let's get out of here. Well, that would explain why I wasn't able to cast. I honestly didn't see it. Okay. Those all exported properly. I'm just checking to make sure all my exports happened while we were going here. Looks like we're good. Sometimes Twitch gets a little cranky about exporting to YouTube and exports fail. It's been happening recently in the past couple of months. So, this is hilarious to me. I've got a guy on TikTok who is trying to argue that Star Trek Strange New Worlds is woke and it's forcing political ideas down the viewers' throats. And I'm like, tell us you've never watched Star Trek without telling us you've never watched Star Trek. Because every single Star Trek since the very first Star Trek series has always had politics. It's talked about genocide, it's talked about racism, it's talked about homosexuality, transsexuality, it's talked about different types of racism and racist regimes. It has addressed across every single series, every single conceptual, political, and social discussion that could happen, it has addressed. Specifically in Star Trek Next Generation and Star Trek Deep Space Nine, they covered some extremely sensitive topics. And the idea that Strange New Worlds is woke because it has discussions about race, racism, and sexuality, and that it's woke, and I'm like,
Star Trek has never been about those things. Star Trek has always been about exploring space, and that's it. Space, a final frontier. I live in my mom's basement, and Star Trek has never been about any of those things. I don't believe it. It's not. No, that's not my Star Trek. Hashtag not my Star Trek.
get out of here. You've never really seen Star Trek. You've never watched Star Trek, if that's your take. Stranger Worlds is great. Yeah. I love all Star Trek. Discovery was awesome too. So is Lower Decks and all those other things. But it's also like the same person was trying to say that I just want an adaptation to be truthful to the material. And it's like, what material, man? Like, Star Trek has always pushed the boundaries of social and other discussions. Like, it's always been out there. And then the other one is someone says they want. So I made a video about the Dragonlance Chronicles and how I'd love a TV show, and they were like, I would only love. This is the funny thing. He says, I would only want a Dragonlance show if they could do it justice and do it in an authentic manner, just like the Peter Jackson films for Lord of the Rings. And I literally responded to that person. I was like, you do realize that the Peter Jackson films, as awesome as they were not authentic. Because he came back and he was like, it just needs to be true to the books. If it's not true to the books, there's no point in doing it. It needs to be like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films. And I was like, oh, okay, tell us you've never actually watched Peter Jackson's films without ever watching Peter Jackson's films. Because Peter Jackson was not accurate to the Lord of the Rings books at all. At all. Not book accurate. Nor should it have been. Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films are amazing, but they are not book accurate. Where is Glorfindel at the Ford of Anduin? Where is Glorfindel? Why is it Arwen? Like, what's up with the Faramir taking the ring back to Minas Tirith and not letting Frodo and Sam go free? Do not come at me with that bullshit that you want book accurate and then you quote Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films as an example of book accurate adaptation, because oh my god, it is so not book accurate. Even though it is a brilliant, my favorite film series of all time, it is not book accurate. And I don't care. I don't want it to be book accurate. But these idiots who sit there and be like, I need my book, these TV shows need to be book accurate. Trust me, you don't want book accurate. You don't want book accurate. Because no one wants to sit and go through 3 seasons of Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli running and 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 running, and how many leagues they ran. Oh, and eating. Do you know how many times they focus on the food in Lord of the Rings? No one wants to see eating and eating and eating and eating and eating and more running. And guess what, guys? More running. Oh, look at that. They're doing more running. How many leagues did they travel today? What's the distance between here and here? Because that's what Tolkien did. Tolkien was a World War II veteran. Was it World War II, World War I? I always forget. One of the world wars. I would have to go back and actually quote myself on that. Someone's gonna rip me apart right now.
You're not actually a Tolkien. You don't actually know Tolkien if you don't know which war it was. I don't fucking remember.
But his whole point was he was writing it from the trenches, which had to have been World War I, right? And he was talking about the forced marches and distance. It was always about distance and the grime and the grit of travel and the mosquitoes and the hunger and buckle your belt a little bit more. Yeah, World War I. Buckle your belt another notch, because you're not getting any food for another week. Like, that was Lord of the Rings. You cannot take that and put that into a film or a TV show. It won't work. And they're sitting over there in the corner.
It has to be book accurate. Book accurate.
No. No. Book accurate will never work. Yeah, book accurate would be a 10-year show. Correct. Sherrod says that guy never heard of the kiss between Nichols and Shatner or the story of the two guys had faces that switched white to black faces as racism. Right. I feel like some of the people have just never watched Star Trek when they make comments like that, because you've clearly... Like, I remember in Deep Space Nine in particular, they had multiple episodes focused on racism and race riots, and I think they covered like the race riots of the 90s that were happening in California at the time. Do I have to go out through this whole way? Ralph says Frodo waited many years before he actually set out. Right, it was... I forget, it was 30-some years or something. I would have to go back and look at things. And also the whole, they waited for how many months in Rivendell before they set off. Like, it's just not... Anytime someone uses that whole book accurate quote, I just am like, whatever. I'm literally no longer listening to you. You've lost the right for me to pay attention to anything you have to say, because you're over there like having an epileptic fit over book accuracy when you don't actually know what that means. Like, we talked about the stage production a couple months ago. We were like, if someone tried to do the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, right, on a stage production, you can't. You literally can't have that battle on stage, because you're never going to get a bunch of horses into a theater. You're never going to be able to have thousands of orcs on stage. You're never going to be able to have thousands of horses riding across. So how are you going to adapt the Battle of Pelennor Fields and the charge of the men of Rohan? How are you going to adapt that for a theater performance? I'll wait. Please tell me how you're going to create a book-accurate version of that battle on a stage. I'll wait. I have nowhere to go. Like, you're not going to do it. What about the Ents? When the Ents charge out from Fanghorn and they run to Helm's Deep. How are you going to portray all the Ents devouring all of the orcs outside of Helm's Deep? How are you going to properly show the scale of an Ent when Theoden is sitting on his horse and marveling at the size of the trees and marveling at the legends come to life? How are you going to portray that on stage? You're not. Shut the fuck up with your book accurate bullshit nonsense. You don't know what you're talking about. You literally don't.
But it needs to be book accurate. They shouldn't do the show unless they're gonna be book accurate. Just don't adapt the books if it's not gonna be book accurate.
No thanks. I want TV shows, and I think Brandon Sanderson said it best. We want our adaptations to be different. We want the TV show to be different than the movie, to be different than the comic book, to be different from the stage presentation, to be different from the books, to be different from the graphic novel, to be different from the radio drama. We want these things to be different because they give us different angles to look at, different lenses to view the original work through. And at the end of the day, everything leads back to the source material, and that's the most important thing. Bringing new fans into whatever the IP is. Thank you for attending my TED Talk. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Daily streams at 4:35 a.m. on YouTube and Twitch. Where you too can get your rant on or have your topic discussed if you want to be a crybaby bitch. I will happily tear you apart. Speaking of Sandman, the new episodes just dropped a couple nights ago. I think Chris and I do watch the rest of those because we watched the first 6. Reviews are up on YouTube, but I need to watch the new episodes. I think there was 5 new ones that dropped, and then there's one more at the end of the month. And I have a WhatsApp message. Hang on, I gotta pay attention to this. Let me go check this. This is hilarious. So my brother just sent me a message. So they've got a GoPro that they use to film all the ranch footage, and I do a lot of the video editing for them. And I was comments like he always forgets to plug the GoPro into the gimbal handle, and it'll just flop around. It's a little coil plug-in, and it'll flop, and it clanks against the casing, and the mic picks it up all the time, and I'm always reminding him, plug the fucking thing in, and he always forgets. So he literally just sent me a message. He's like, I know, don't yell at me. I forgot to do it the first half of this video, and then I remembered the last half of the video, and then I just finished recording, and I just put a rubber band around it so that I could stop forgetting. Oh, is Myra not here? I forget where we're supposed to meet Myra at. Quest journal. Fuck, where was she? Oh, I think it was the Merchant District. Because she was at Axel's estate, I think. Excuse me. Man, I might have to go make some more coffee, I think. That 3 a.m. wake up. Yeah, media literacy is important. I think just literacy in general is important. I just feel like, there's too many people who are wandering around this world with low IQs. You know what it comes down to, and I think there have been quite a few comedians who have talked about this. We no longer have natural selection because we've put labels on everything. And so the ones who previously wouldn't have made it because they would have drank the thing they weren't supposed to drink, or touched the thing they weren't supposed to touch, or done the thing they weren't supposed to do, those people are allowed to exist now because we've bypassed natural selection. And so now we have literally Stupidity running amok. I've done some stupid stuff. I think we all have, but I think there's a difference between doing stupid stuff and being stupid. Like, I'll give you an example of me doing something really stupid, and it could have resulted in a much more harm than came to me. Um, when we were in the city, when we were in Mexico City, this is a few years ago. Um, the boiler, the water heater for the house that we were staying in, was really old, like a 30-year-old, 40-year-old boiler. So an old gas um, boiler, water heater. And the pilot light kept going out, and we had asked the landlady, she'd replaced it twice. It was the third time, and I was just like, I'm just going to go clean it myself because I don't want to wait. And so I went, turned the gas off, went in there with a toothbrush, scrubbed it all out, scrubbed everything, cleaned it all up. I know what to do. I've done that thing before. I grew up in construction. I know how to clean pilot lights. I know how to do all that stuff. I then took, and bear in mind, this is a water heater. If you've never dealt with an old gas water heater, at the bottom, there's a little hatch that opens up, and inside of that hatch is the pilot. And there's not really a lot of other ventilation other than that hatch that you open up. So I had opened the hatch, and I was in there, scrubbed it all out, everything else. Well, then I went and took a can of compressed air and went and sprayed it in there to like get all the dust particulate out of the area that I had just scrubbed, right? And then, wait for it, I gave it a couple of minutes thinking that that was enough time for that condensed air to evaporate. I should have given it way more than 2 minutes, because I went up in there, put my face up in the hatch, and took a match and took my right hand, and I had my face down in there, and I stuck my right hand in there to light the pilot, because my left hand was up here holding the pilot open, and it went boom, fireball to the face, and I had burn blisters across all 4 knuckles from this joint to this joint, right here, across all 4 knuckles. The worst were these 2, but I had, inch-long blisters on all 4 fingers. I lost what little eyebrows I have. I burned my mustache mostly off, and I'm balding anyway, but I burned the front 2 inches of my hair. I literally took a fireball to the face. And thankfully, I managed to close my eyes, because that could have resulted in eye damage and a whole bunch of other shit. And all it, I burned my hand because my hand was in there, and then I took a fireball to the face. Looked like I'd been sunburnt. Thankfully, I didn't get any burns on my face. But those are the things, we all do stupid things, right? That was a stupid thing to do. I knew better. I thought that 2 minutes was long enough. And that's one of the things you should never do. I don't know if you've ever used compressed air. This shit is highly flammable. And you know what a lot of people will do is they'll take a laptop or a device that's on, and they'll take this and they'll spray it into the fan, or they'll spray this into their PlayStation, or they'll spray this into their Xbox, thinking that, oh well, it's on, the fan's moving, it'll help me get rid of all the dust. That is the stupidest thing you can do, because if that thing ever sparks, if there's ever a spark inside of your machine, inside of your device, while you're spraying that air in there, that's going to be a fireball to the face, and if you're very unlucky, it's going to blow that thing up in your hand too. And yet people don't pay attention to those types of things, and then you hear these horror stories of somebody. Here's another one. Our next door neighbor, correct, Pedro, gas boilers nowadays, that's different. So I'm talking this was it had to have been a 40-year-old boiler. It was old. It was a really old water heater, man. I think the lady, because we were in her house, renting from her, not in her house, but it was her sister's apartment that we were renting, and her sister had died years ago, and there was the blender in that apartment, because it was a furnished apartment. It was definitely a blender from like the early 80s, and it was like we didn't use it, but it was still in there. And it was like, she had kept like all of her sister's stuff, and the water heater was definitely like 40 years old. It was very, very, very old. Because yeah, modern machines will have solutions to those things. Um, so yeah, yes, it could have been a lot worse. But those are the things. Like everybody does stupid things, but there's a big difference between doing a stupid thing and learning from it, or just being stupid in general and never learning anything, or just never having um, everything. Natural selection is still in action. It's wiping out influencers nowadays. Well, I mean, there's. Let me take the selfie on the edge of this waterfall cliff with no railing behind me, and I'm like 2,000 feet up, and then I slip, and wow, like there's definitely that kind of stuff happens, but. Oh. What do you think happened? Someone is talking who shouldn't be. Still, if they were tipped off, surprised the watchers pulled up to attack the warehouse. When I ran out the trail, I see him hanging by his own entrails. At least the shipment's saved. Alright. When I was young, I dropped a spatula into a deep fat fryer, says James MC, and then put my hand in to grab it out. Ooh, man, oil burns are not, like grease burns are nothing to. I'd say the most I've been burned multiple times, for for stupid things. Let's see. You know those mocha cappuccino machines, the mocha espresso machines, the Italians will use the stovetop ones. We were in an Airbnb, and we had a flight to catch, and we were literally on our way out the door, and I was doing a to-go cup of coffee, and when I picked up it was an Airbnb, and when I picked up like the handle on the back, and I picked it up, the handle was like loose, and I wasn't paying attention, and it sloshed backwards, and like right across my ring finger, I got scalding, boiling hot coffee that just, and I was like, ah! It immediately went under the cold water, and it didn't matter. We were on a flight to Spain, so we were on like a 14-hour flight, and like 6 hours into the flight, this thing is like bubbling up on my finger. And I'm just like, I can't believe this happened. We're at the beginning of a 3-month trip. And, I'm supposed to be out here doing photography and videography. And now my camera hand has this big fat fracking blister on it. I was so pissed. Yeah, water doesn't stop it. Yeah, it's no fun. Yep. And I don't know how many of you ever had, like poison ivy or poison oak, but when you're a kid, unless someone has told you, like that shit is an oil, and thankfully I've never I grew up around it, so I knew not to do this, but I've heard horror stories of people who didn't know about like the natural oil in like on the leaves and stuff, and they'll get it on themselves, and then they start to itch, and then they're like scratching, and then they go to touch their face, or they scratch something, and then it's like it's everywhere, and it's like, no, the best thing is like dish soap, because dish soap has anti-grease properties. It's like if you think you've gotten into some of that stuff, you need to get to like a dish soap dispenser immediately and take a shower with dish soap and just like get that shit off, because normal soap's not going to do anything, and you're just spreading the oil around. It's Can you imagine, though, like before modern medicine, what people had to, I mean, that's natural selection right there. Like, you're living as cavemen in the woods, and you're trying to survive. You don't know what plants do what. You don't know what's poisonous or not. You don't know what's safe to eat. You don't know what's safe to touch. Can you like that? That's the scary part about nature is like shit will kill you and the planet will eat you. Like you are literally just worm food. Worm food.